We're going to spend today focused particularly on what is known as psychological first aid. We received specific requests to review this material, and it is valuable information with a bit of a caveat. As you will see during today's presentation, these skills and approaches are helpful, but maybe not the best fit for prolonged and chronic stress. So, in addition to providing information that was requested, we are also using this week as a transitional topic from acute stress last week to the topic of chronic stress. So, to begin, we'd like to first highlight a basic definition of psychological first aid. It is an approach that has been supported by research,
Це
and its focus is on an immediate response to a distressing situation. And the response is often focused on an individual versus a community level response.
і
And truly, the goals are to increase safety and reduce dis. So, an honest initial assessment, such as the number that you have self-identified, is important in order to have the correct and appropriate response. And so we thank you for putting your honest ranking into the chat. Sometimes people do not want to disclose how uncomfortable they actually feel. And we understand the valid reasons why. And it's also helpful to be able to lead with honesty as you are doing. Our ability to be honest with ourselves will support our ability to help other people be honest about what they need. Psychological first aid, in some ways, has a similar set of goals to medical first aid. In medical first aid, we seek to stabilize a medical crisis. The goal of medical first aid is not to cure disease or even do long-term medical interventions. The same is true for psychological first aid. In some ways, the skills utilized in psychological first aid can seem basic or even self-evident. In times of crisis and destabilization, the ability to actively and supportively listen to another person is really valuable. In a way, the ability to actively listen allows for a needs assessment and providing support and comfort to be possible. And the importance of active listening as a way of making connections between people cannot be understated. We have said in other trainings that distress is isolating and isolation is distressing. So if one of the goals of psychological first aid is to decrease distress, it only makes sense that we would seek to increase the sense of connection. Now, connection in this context is connection either to other people or potentially to resources and services. And the goals for psychological first aid, again, are simple and straightforward. Providing comfort and support can help a person feel calmer and safer and more able to cope. And connecting people to services and other people can also help someone feel calmer, safer, and more able to cope. Because again, just like with medical first aid, the primary goal of psychological first aid is to support someone to continue to keep going. Embedded within that goal is a hope that the crisis will end and that if we keep going, we will get to the other side. And that is very important. There's also a limitation. The limitation is that this is a purely reactive approach. Psychological first aid is appropriate in response to an event that has happened recently. Some of the signs and symptoms we can look for in determining whether psychological first aid could be helpful are these here on the screen. And these are all common and expected responses to stress and crisis. And I know that for some people who are just listening, it helps if we read all the words. So, Natalia, would you be so kind as to do that in Ukrainian?
uh, can you also read it in
Oh,
English?
yeah, absolutely. So these common and expected responses include shock and disbelief. Just as a brief comment, whereas we are focusing on acute stress response here, we also have an in-depth training on grief and loss, which could be reviewed for a more robust response to those sets of symptoms. And it provides a helpful comparison between the focus of psychological first aid and the focus of more depth-oriented work. And that training, along with all of the others, are available on the Vela Project website. About this kind of work is that anyone with basic training can do it. And really, we can focus on three steps. The first step is the needs assessment. It could be as simple as looking around an environment to see signs of distress. And it may also be helpful to have a rating scale or some other measurement, such as the thermometer exercise that we use. Now, the second step is connected to the first. And these instructions assume that you are entering into a situation with people that are unfamiliar to you.
І ці інструкції, вони надані.
So these instructions begin by telling you to introduce yourself. But the important takeaway instruction is actually to focus on building a relational connection. And so if you already know someone, then you could approach it differently. I don't know what the Ukrainian translation might be for the English idiom small talk, but it is okay to use informal dialogue and small talk to build that relational connection at first. Again, the important focus is to begin from hello to increase comfort and decrease distress. One very helpful technique if you are in person, if you are able to, have some water, a bottle of water, and offer it to someone. And it's also important to get a person's permission. Is it okay to talk? Assuming the person says yes, your job then is just sometimes what a person says in response to an immediate crisis could be somewhat disorganized or unclear, and that's okay. Giving a person an opportunity to verbally process events can help it feel more organized in their own. Organization is important. One thing that crisis and trauma adds into a situation is chaos or disorganization. So if talking helps a person get reoriented and organized, then that is helpful all by itself. If talking about it pushes a person further away from zero in either direction on the thermometer, then it may not be as helpful to continue talking about it. In that situation, if you have any stress reduction or calming techniques, then it might be best to utilize one of those. And throughout our trainings, we have shared various techniques that could be used. So you can also review our other trainings for some ideas. Now, the third step here may be the most important step for psychological first aid. Oh, Natalia?
Yeah, Joe, so like we are talking that people can use some techniques to calm down person, right? Or to
Yes, so the third step is perhaps the most important for the psychological first aid technique. It is most helpful if we as service providers can ourselves be organized and prepared. Because, again, one of the goals is to increase stability, increase safety, increase organization. So, in the aftermath of a crisis, having information and resources and supplies can be really helpful. Again, if you are able to have a supply of water bottles, that is a great example of the kind of supplies that can be very helpful. Other things that could be helpful could include portable snack foods or cell phone chargers, or even a charged phone that someone could use to make a call. In terms of resources, as best as you are able, having a prepared list of uh, places that people can go to get their needs met, or other services that you can refer them to is helpful. And then a third category of resources would be any simple techniques, again, relaxation or calming techniques that you are able to provide in the moment. We advise you to keep your interventions simple and clear. A bottle of water, a breathing exercise, and a website for more services. Here are some further reminders. The first question here I find to be very helpful. How can you help the person feel better in this moment? If they are cold or wet or hungry, can you help them feel more comfortable? The second point on this slide is just a reiteration of the helpfulness of being prepared with resources, a list of resources as best as you. And the third point here emphasizes the importance of compassion and connection.
І третій момент важливий це саме зв'язка, розуміння зв'язка і розуміння доброти і того, що ви пов'язані з людиною, вона відчуває, що її хтось розуміє.
If our job is to respond in an immediate crisis, we also want to make sure the person is connected to some other people or services that can be of a longer term benefit. And again, an example could be, if possible, to have with you a well-charged cell phone that allows the person to make a phone call to a family or friend. Imagine the calming benefits if you are able to give a person a blanket to wrap around them and a phone where they can say, "I'm okay. Are you okay?" to a friend or loved one. The last thing to say about this slide is oftentimes in crisis situation, information, even if it's bad news, can be more stabilizing than a lack of information. Speaking of information, we will put into the chat two links to documents here.
І
And these are two resource manuals on psychological first aid in Ukrainian. So if our brief overview has not been sufficient or you would like to learn more, please see these two resources. We now want to pause and ponder. The perceived stress questionnaire is a helpful assessment of someone's response to a stressful event or crisis. And that questionnaire can be found at the link you see on the screen here.
Joe, can you send the link to chat so people can see?
Yes, I believe I can do that.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Daria said that she will share it
okay,
on Telegram.
great.
So don't worry about it.
Um,
Move on. Thank
Now,
you.
the trouble here is that if you give the perceived stress questionnaire to someone living in a war context, they will score very, very high all the time. So it may not always be the most appropriate course of action to focus on an acute stress response without acknowledging and understanding chronic stress. And so we want to point out the important differences between acute and chronic stress response, but also to note that there are similarities in terms of physiological activation in response to any stress. So looking back at last week's lecture, you can understand the specifics of acute stress, and then we will look forward in future lectures to be able to compare that to chronic stress. Before we wrap up today, we also want to remind you that next week is a scheduled break from these lectures. So we will have time on July 23rd to begin to understand the other constellation of stress and stress response. Between now and then, we invite you to consider how psychological first aid principles can be helpful in your communities. We also invite you to consider how psychological first aid techniques should be adapted to the context in which you live and work. And also important, identify the limits of how psychological first aid could be useful in your context, because that will be all helpful information to carry with us into our exploration of chronic stress. So to finish today, we want to invite you into one of our own experiences of calming and connection. Oftentimes, when hearing someone talk, memories come to your mind. I invite you to begin to notice if there are any memories or images of people that symbolize calm and safety and comfort for you. And if those are hard to come by, look into this picture to find a space of calm. Shift into a physically comfortable position as much as you can. Take a full and relaxed breath and notice where you find that comfort. Is there a part in your body that feels most relaxed or safe or comfortable? With your next breath, notice if there are any images either on the screen or in your mind that are comfortable and relaxed. As you continue to breathe comfortably and fully, notice if there are any memories of people that bring comfort and calm to you now. Take time to enjoy whatever pieces of comfort and calm and safety you can connect with now as you breathe. No matter how big or small, no matter how near or distant these feelings are, notice them.
Неважливо.
And with the next couple of breaths, see if you can find a way to hold on to the sense of comfort. Maybe there's a word that you can repeat to yourself. Maybe there's a particular image that as you breathe fills you with safety. Maybe you're like me and it's a sound. For me, it's the sound of my grandmother's voice. Whatever it is, take just a couple more breaths and enjoy this moment. We are thankful for the opportunity to have this moment of calm and safety with you. And we hope that you can take a little bit of the positive energy that we have generated together today forward into the rest of your day. As we begin to close this meeting, I invite you to take 2 or 3 invigorating breaths. Maybe shift in your chair, stretch if you need to, and allow what you are feeling to be evidence to prove that you are not alone.